show me the way to go home because home is where God is. And Uncle Luke, he writes a whole book for us so that we would understand exactly how to get home. He's going to tell us how God showed up. He's going to tell us how he had to interact the same way we did, asking, who does Jesus think he is? Better question, who do I think Jesus is? Well, anyhow, last week we saw that Jesus picks yet another, or what shall we say, a new dirty dozen. And it's not the first time that the Bible has used a dirty dozen. God picked a dirty dozen to get the story of Israel going. And Jesus comes along the scene and he says, man, we've got a new scene. Everything's too new here. The old is so good, but the old has been misrepresented. So we're going to need to pick a new dirty dozen. But he does pick another dirty dozen, which is so great. But anyhow, now that the dirty dozen is chosen, it is time for a new world order. Come on, let's check it out from Luke chapter 6, verse 16 to those Beatitudes. Welcome to the Biblical Channel. So glad you're here because, hey, man, we're just people getting together doing what people should be doing, and that is reading their Bible, saying their prayers, getting together and talking God. At the Biblical Channel, me and Jerome just want people to talk about God more, and so that's why we put this station together to hopefully build your confidence and seeing the value in the storylines of the Bible, that it's really the best thing the world has ever seen. So we want to get you feeling comfortable, talking God all the time. You should be able to bring God up in a conversation because these stories are so good, man, and they are real. Anyhow, we'll get to that. The greatest story ever played is what the Bible truly is. And we, as human beings, living on a planet going 100,000 mile an hour around the sun and spinning at 1,000 mile an hour, man, we need good stories. We need good stories that make sense out of life, man, to give us a bit of a chill, because this place is wound up. This place is too much at times. This place is exhausting. I saw one famous actor say, you know what? I gotta believe in God just to cope with this world. I think that's exactly right. I think it was that Russell guy. Anyhow, the Bible is literally God playing out his story. It's God's world, man. And it's time to do it God's way, man. And before we dive in and look at our text, read our text, let's pray the way Jesus' mom teaches us how to pray. Yeah, that pagan, she's not pagan, that peasant girl, Mary, says it perfectly when she says, my soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. I'm a big fan of Mary. And Jesus teaches us how to pray, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, Lord, but deliver us from evil. There's the rub. Right, so our text is Luke chapter 6, verse 17, actually, to 26. And it goes like this. And Jesus came down with them, the new dirty dozen, and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from Judea, Jerusalem, the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And the crowd sought to touch him, for power came out from him, and he healed them all. He lifted up his eyes upon his disciples, and he said, blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who is hungry, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For so their fathers did to the prophets. But woe to those who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full right now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets. Woo, powerful words by Jesus. You know, it doesn't seem like he says a lot, but boy, does he say a lot. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But here we are. The Beatitudes, the blessings and the cursings. Well, let's take a look at this. First of all, Jesus is a choreographer. Jesus knows exactly the script that he is playing out and he's bringing everybody into. And it is the script of the old part of the Bible, the Hebrew scriptures, the Hebrew Bible. It is that is Jesus' script. And he is using it to maneuver himself, to put himself in a position so that people see what he is doing. He is putting himself, as we already saw last week, he is putting himself in a position that is above David. He is putting himself in a position that is above Moses. Who does Jesus think he is? Well, he thinks he can do this. And I do too. And Christians do as well. So we see the play that he's making here. He was up on a mountain. He chose his new dirty dozen. You know, those apostles who were, a bunch of average folk, really. They weren't the best and the brightest. They weren't the squeaky clean. They weren't the beautiful people. No, they were just average, ordinary folk. Because this is God we're talking about, man, and God doesn't need, those who don't need a physician, to borrow Jesus' words. Jesus, God, is going to use people who actually are sick and know they're sick. And so I call them the dirty dozen. But with this new dirty dozen, this scene breaks out and you can't miss the choreography that's going on because it's all about Deuteronomy, Exodus, the old storyline of Israel coming out of Egypt, out of bond servants, out of slavery, out of Egypt to Mount Sinai, to Mount Ebal, to Mount Gerizim. And that's exactly what Jesus has in mind. He's coming down the mountain. He finds a level place and he starts to talk. The crowd is electric. The crowd is a buzz because Jesus is healing them. And we get the feeling that maybe they're a little bit misled, but nonetheless, it's good. It's very good. And so the new 12 are now gathered on a new mountain. And this mountain scene that Jesus is recreating is kind of like Mount Deja Deuteronomy all over again. Deuteronomy chapter 27, 28, or Exodus chapter 19. Either one, it doesn't matter. Jesus is laying it out like God had laid it out before. He is gathering people on a mountain to hear the words. And so once again, who does Jesus think he is if he can stand on the side of a mountain and speak words that everybody must listen to? Oh, I got news for you. He thinks he's God. And Christians do too. But anyhow, this Mount Deja Deuteronomy, chapter 27, 28, is, if you read those two chapters, you see that was the time right before, Israel crossed into the promised land, that Moses instructed them when they cross into the promised land, they are to gather on Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, and they are to speak these blessings and these curses to each other from God. And so, this whole scene has that vibe, but it also harkens us back to Exodus chapter 19, when God had brought them out from Egypt and he brought them out to Mount Sinai to actually speak to them. And remember that the whole ambition that God has is to create a nation of priests that's going to get out into the world so that all the world may be blessed. That is the promise that God had made to Abraham. It is God's desire to bring a blessing to the whole entire world. We know that Israel just doesn't know how to play the right way. Israel keeps getting caught up in the most current thing. So early, Israel was caught up in the Persians things, in the Assyrians thing, in the Canaans things, in the Egypt things. They were all caught up in the most current thing. And even today, in Jesus' day, we see that the Pharisees and the scribes, they are not tracking. And Jesus is setting the record straight. because this scene is supposed to feel like the Hebrew Bible, but this is the message that was supposed to be received from the very beginning. And this is why Jesus chose a new dirty dozen, because the old dirty dozen was just getting too hard to work with. But he's still inviting them. They're still welcome in here. But this new scene on the side of a mountain is going to be short and pithy. And it is nothing less, though, than a whole new world order, right? Whenever Jesus speaks very briefly, very quickly, blessed are you who are poor, blessed are you who are hungry, who weep, people that are hated for hanging out with Jesus, seeing something in Jesus that others may not be seeing. And he gives woes to you who are rich, because you might miss it. Woe to you who are full, because you might miss it. Woe to you who are laughing, you might miss this thing. Woe to you when all people speak well to you. Be careful, because what Jesus is making it absolutely clear that the Bible does too, in the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are just as refreshing, just as upending to a countercultural revival as Jesus' words right here. In fact, these words, are the spirit of the Ten Commandments. It's getting at the heart of the same issues. It's talking about the same things the same way. It's putting a mockery of the way this world behaves on notice. And so the Bible indeed does mock the way that our world operates. God mocks the way that we try to make the world go, because it's broken and we're broken and we keep pretending like it ain't broken. And God is saying it's broken. That's all. Counterculture is God's idea. Anytime a human being thinks they're countercultural, they are not. They are just fitting a new wardrobe and following a new piper, and they start dressing just like him. Think about the hippies, of the 70s, if you're that old, or seen pictures, they all look alike, and think about the hip hop movement today. Yeah, they all look alike. And think about, and then I say, I work in middle school, so I see it, whatever is countercultural, all of a sudden, there's a strict code as to how to be countercultural. It's only God that is truly countercultural. And that is why the Bible is not well received, because it's countercultural. Oh, people say a lot of things as to why the Bible is not well received. They're not telling the truth. They don't like it because it actually is countercultural. The whole way the world works around us, we know it. We hear it all the time. I'm a good person because I support the current thing. That's the mentality. That's the cry of today's culture. I'm a good person because I support the current thing. That's an insanity. We crave pop culture. We fall in line with any new cultural trends. We don't dare stick out. We find some sort of little group to fit into, so that we can pretend like, we're being countercultural. But at the end of the day, it's all the same. And it's all about following some other weird movement. No. If you really want to be countercultural, go into any party, any social scene, go into your schools, go anywhere and start dropping this stuff into the conversation. Say, I'm starting to think that maybe watching porn isn't a great idea. You watch the reaction. Start talking about how, I'm starting to see the value in holding off sexually until you are married, and watch people, their faces, their jaw drop. We said that all the time about our kids, and honest to God, people thought we were literally harming our children. Try talking about how maybe abortions aren't that good, Try talking about how maybe divorce really isn't that good for us. Try talking about the real stuff, and you're going to find yourself on the outside looking in very quickly. This idea that I believe in myself, the cry of the modern generation, that you'll be successful if you believe in yourself. Believing in yourself isn't saying much. In fact, the craziest people that I know, they believe in themselves, and they yell it very loudly. and complete self-confidence, in yourself. It's not so much a sin, it's just a weakness. And it's the narrowest, most intolerant, ignorant, arrogant, unimaginative, and unforgiving state of existence. Modern people deny the existence of sin. But yet at the same time, it's the only portion of the Bible that always proves itself to be true every single day. All you got to do is stick your head up and look around, and you see it going on everywhere. But no, we're great at putting our heads down and pretending like it doesn't exist. And then the Bible actually endures time because of one factor. It is real. It's very real. It's real like everything else is unreal. And so every biblical character in the Bible is actually normal. Even God is actually normal because good in the Bible is normalized. The goodness that we, take for granted is what is normalized in the Bible. And there is no place in this mad world that is trying to normalize goodness. The mad world in which we live in is trying to normalize evil. And Jesus' words here, blessed are you who are poor, blessed are you who are hungry and weep and hate. Whoever said that? The Chinese didn't say that. The Africans didn't say that. The Europeans didn't say that. The Asians didn't say that. Nor did the Native Americans. That's not how human beings have shown themselves in history. Not at all. Good is actually under attack by people who believe themselves and believe in themselves because they brutalize anybody else whose imagination includes more than their very own. Judgments and punishments are ready for anybody who includes more in their imaginations, and they are branded as lunatics, heretics, and treasonous, ready to be branded. But here's the question. How is it that we all did somehow come to believe in equality, compassion, consent, enlightenment, science, freedom, progress? Was it the Romans that taught this way forward? Was it the Greeks that taught this way forward? Was it anything out of Africa or Asia? And let's face it, North and South Americans, they weren't writing anything down. So who knows? Maybe he had something to say. But they don't have anything to say in history, and they certainly don't have a great track record that leaves some sort of clear evidence behind that they were on this kind of track. The track of equality, the track of compassion, the track of consent, enlightenment, science, freedom, progress. The old gods did not endorse these things. The old gods actually endorsed just the opposite. Oh, sure, the old gods believed in equality for themselves, compassion for their friends, consent, was among buddies, but not for everybody. Because in the old world, the old gods completely endorsed things like slavery and inequality and running around saying that there's an equality that we share and compassion that we should have and consent that must be demanded and enlightenment, for us all. And science is a good thing and freedom and progress. Hey, I got news for you. It comes from this place right here. Blessed are you who are poor, Jesus says, speaking with the authority of God, because he is God. The poor are blessed. Whoever said to the poor, you are blessed. If you were ever poor, if you were ever hungry, if you were ever sad, you didn't feel blessed. And what God is saying is that he notices and he counts you as blessed. You see, what Jesus is doing is telling this world that its culture sucks. And we need a counter-cultural revelation. We need a counter-cultural revolution. You can't have a revolution until you have a revelation. And so this is the revelation, that the blessed are the poor, the hungry, and those who are weeping. Blessed is actually those who are hated for loving and trusting and believing in the Son of Man, who is Jesus Christ. Jesus assures everybody that, if you are indeed being mocked for following me. Trust me, you are blessed. This world has nothing for you. In fact, Jesus lays out the woes. It's not a crime to be rich, and Jesus isn't telling everybody that it's great to be poor. And he's not telling everybody it's cool to be hungry. No, and he's not telling you it's a problem to be full, but he's speaking clear. He's speaking good. He's speaking in a way that this world never gets serious about. And he says, listen, if you are rich and you're full and you're laughing and people speak well of you, you're in a danger zone for being completely irrelevant. You're in a danger zone for being completely apart from what God is doing in this world. Because what God is doing in this world is blessing the poor, blessing the hungry, blessing those who weep, and blessing those who are hated for no good reason other than their association with God. You see, Jesus' words are simple, and I'm sure he gets accused of being a simpleton. But Jesus' words, ladies and gentlemen, have created the world in which we live. It's Jesus' words. It's the biblical world. It's the Ten Commandments. It's the Beatitudes. It's the Sermon on the Mount that has literally grown roots across the world. And that was God's idea from the very beginning when he called the first dirty dozen to Mount Sinai. And now Jesus has called a new dirty dozen to his mountain with the same idea in mind, to break down this stupid culture that we keep raising up. If you've got a favorite culture, lay it down, my friend. Pick up the culture of Jesus Christ. Pick up the culture of blessing the poor. Pick up the culture of blessing the hungry. Pick up the culture of blessing those who are sad. And pick up the culture of blessing those who are hated and despised for just loving and trusting Jesus. That's countercultural, my friend, and you go walking into any party talking like that and you will find yourself exposed. Well, naturally speaking, a modern day hearer still finds all of this to be a bit stupid or daft. God's counterculture, though, has no rival. There's no old gods that endorse this kind of thinking. Rome doesn't endorse this thinking. Greece does not endorse this thinking. Asia, Buddha, the Dalai Lama does not endorse this thinking. This is unique, my friends. And this is the uniqueness of the culture that we do actually have all around us now. You see, it turns out that God on a cross is the natural ending to these blessings and these woes. Jesus Christ hanging on the cross is actually the perfect fit to what Jesus is saying now to help you to understand why God would be hanging on a cross. But the modern world around us still finds this incredibly stupid, painfully imbecilic. Jesus' teaching is sentimental at best. Oh, he's a good guy. Don't pat him on the head. Yet for Christians, there's something about all of this that makes sense. There's something about all of this changing the world business and the way the world actually works that does make sense of our own lives and our own worlds. And we feel God's touch from heaven above, who actually stoops to change our worlds. The highest of all highest, God himself plumbs the lowest depths and begins a radical movement to upend the world. Jesus' new dirty dozen here and the thousands who are gathered around him, they're the ones who persisted with their absolutely foolish preaching. And remarkably, people started to listen. You know why? That's the work of God. That is God's work in this world. To hear Jesus say these things for the first time, mind you, and to make them clearly God's ways for this world, and anything that's not doing this is not God's way. If it doesn't match to this, it's not God's way. This is a very simple set of instruction to order your life, to order your thinking, to order your actions. Jesus' new dirty dozen, unlike the old dirty dozen, they persisted with this foolish preaching and teaching, and remarkably, they gained a hearing. And over time, the belief that Christ crucified was also the power of God, it began to look less and less ridiculous because a power seemed to be at work behind it. A movement began, first in the minds, and in the hearts, and in their love and in their treatment of each other. First, minds were changed, and then their lives were changed, and communities were changed, and cultures have been changed, and then everything's just simply been changed. For those groups out there that pound the drum of racism today and fascism and all their blurting outs, they will not admit that they're standing on the shoulders of Jesus Christ, because it was Jesus who started this movement of looking out for the poor. And here's another thing about today's movement of people who seem to be so concerned about racism and fascism. How come they don't reach out to guys like Clarence Thomas to be in their group? They're supposed to be looking out for Clarence's people. They're supposed to be looking out for Thomas Sowell's people, Walter Williams' people, Frederick Douglass's people, Booker T. Washington's people. They're supposed to be all about those people. And yet they do not welcome the words of Clarence Thomas, Thomas Sowell, and on down the line. Frederick Douglass, not welcome. You see, there's a foolery going on. People are now doing something wildly different. They're actually pretending like they're doing better than Jesus. But what do we get in its place? You don't get a Jesus-like movement. In fact, it gets hostile, it gets hateful, it gets accusatory, it gets judgmental, and eventually this foolish message that Jesus, has sprung across the globe gets twisted and distorted and demented because they're trying to do it without Jesus. They're trying to be the new king of the mountain. Ladies and gentlemen, I got news for you. There's one king, and he's got his mountain. And these are his words. And nobody is changing culture like Jesus Christ and his followers change culture. Because cultural change is really about being poor in spirit, being hungry in spirit, being sad, being alive and seeing the world for what it truly is. You see, this message of foolishness that Jesus started, it actually has become the most influential human movement in history. And if you're on Jesus' side, you're on the right side of history. And don't try to do it without Jesus, because it's all his. And I got news for you. Jesus' followers have been doing a great job of getting the word out. Christianity is the largest religion of the 330 million people in the United States and the close to 8 billion people in the world now. Christianity is still number one, and that's because God is behind it. And that's because these words somehow end up making strange sense to a world that is doing everything it can to not do those things. Ladies and gentlemen, come to Jesus and be satisfied. Do it his way, not your way. Catch you next time.